Carolyn was the first name whispered in the dark office, though no one could ever agree on who spoke it. You're here now, staring at a story that should have stayed buried in court transcripts and forgotten. HR files, but something inside you wants to know. Why? This woman was punished for bowing her head for 10 quiet seconds in the corner of a break room. You've seen people lose jobs before. You've heard of discrimination cases before, but nothing feels like this. This doesn't read like paperwork. It feels like a confession pressed into your hands. One that still carries the heat of whoever last held it. They told you not to look deeper, not to connect what happened to Caroline with the sudden growth of the very company that cast her out. But here you are, sitting with a question no one dared to ask. Asterisk, what if the prayers they silenced were the foundation of everything they built? You should know, the first clue didn't come in words, but in something small, strange, and impossible to dismiss. A manager swore he heard a child crying in the office after hours, though no children were anywhere near the building. Security footage showed him pause, turn, and whisper back into the empty hall, his lips forming a name. Not Caroline's, not anyone who worked there. A name that didn't exist in any employee file, but matched the one carved faintly into the wood of Caroline's old desk. A desk that had been polished over and reassigned but never truly erased. It was dismissed as stress, as imagination, but people kept hearing things. Phones ringing with no incoming call. Printers spitting out blank paper with just a single date printed dates that later lined up with moments the company made record profits. You tell yourself it could all be coincidence, yet your chest tightens because it doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like being pulled into a current too strong to fight, like the truth has already chosen you. Faith isn't supposed to leave fingerprints on ledgers. It isn't supposed to echo through walls long after a person is gone. But Caroline's absence became the company's shadow, stretching across every corner until no one could step inside without feeling it. People whispered that she was the quietest woman in the building, that she never spoke, and less spoken to yet, those who worked closest to her admitted something unthinkable. She always knew the numbers before the meetings, the outcomes before the trials, the losses before they even began. And then came the moment no one can explain. The moment even the board locked away and sealed transcripts. During a quarterly briefing, a young executive opened his laptop, ready to present, when the speakers crackled to life on their own. A voice poured through steady, calm, unmistakable. A voice every person in that room recognized. Though Caroline had been gone for nearly a year, she didn't beg, didn't accuse, didn't plead. She only said one sentence. A sentence that made 3 of the men in that room stand up as if burned, as if they'd been caught. I can't repeat that sentence yet. Not here. Not now. Because if I tell you what she said, you won't sleep tonight. But I will tell you this. The executive who heard it first hasn't been seen since. They claim he resigned, they claim he left the state, but his sister still checks his apartment door every week, still finds the light inside flicking on for a few seconds each night. Though the place has been officially empty for months, and now you're caught in it, the story, the silence, the faith they buried that refuses to stay buried. You've heard her name. You've felt the pull. And just when you think you're safe, when you tell yourself, this is just another forgotten injustice, your phone vibrates. One new message, no number. Just the same sentence Caroline spoke into that boardroom. Would you like me to continue this with the full unfolding mystery, where we reveal the sentence and show how it connects to the company's rise and the vanishing people, or keep it locked until the climax, letting the viewer feel the weight of not knowing? The message still glows on your phone screen when the room feels colder, like someone has just stepped out of it instead of in. The sentence is short, almost harmless when you stare at it, but the longer your eyes linger, the more it twists, pulling at a part of you didn't know could be reached by words. You try to screenshot it, but the screen blinks, glitches, and the photo saves as a blank black square, as if your phone refuses to hold on to proof. And that's the first time the doubt creeps in, not about Carolyn, not about the company, but about yourself. Did you really read it? Or did you think it into being because you wanted it too much? Because you were desperate to believe this story wasn't just another rumor? The strangest part is what comes after. 4 hours! No new notifications arrive, and when you scroll back, the message isn't there. It's been replaced by an older chain of texts you forgot you even had with your sister last Christmas. You almost laugh at the absurdity of it, but there's a sour taste in your throat. because you know it was there. You felt your heart punch against your ribs the moment it arrived. That doesn't happen with ordinary messages. That doesn't happen with hallucinations. You turn the phone off, set it face down, and that's when you hear it faint, tinny, like something from a worn cassette tape. A whisper leaking out of the speaker, even though the phone is dark and silent. You lean closer, holding your breath, and for a second you hear her. Carolyn. Not the words, not the full sentence, just the cadence of her voice. The way it trails upward at the end like she's trying to remind you of something you already know. And then nothing, only the low hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, your own shallow breathing. That's when you decide you can't sit with this alone. You reach out to the only person you think might believe you, Michael. An old coworker who used to linger around Caroline's desk during breaks, pretending to joke, pretending not to be afraid of how quiet she was. When you call, his voice cracks before he even says hello, like he hasn't spoken out loud in weeks. He tells you he's been waiting for someone else to admit it, that he's heard her too, in recordings, in late-night static, in the moments between waking and sleep. But when you press him, what did she say? What did you hear? He falters, stammers, says he can't be sure anymore. Michael is the second character you wish you never involved. He's not steady. His memory comes in jagged shards, always shifting, always contradicting. One minute he insists he saw Caroline write the sentence in the margins of a company ledger months before she was fired. Another minute he swears he only dreamed it, that the ledger was blank when he woke. He shows you a box of tapes he claims to have found in the office, storage old dictations, meeting recording spot. When he presses play, they hiss, pop, skip forward to silence. Only once does something break through. A faint child's voice, repeating your name, not his. You try to brush it off. Say, maybe it was background noise. Maybe the tape was corrupted. But Michael doesn't let it go. He leans across the table, eyes raw, whispering like you're both being watched. Don't you get it? That's why they fired her. Not because of prayer, not because of HR policies, because she knew. The problem is, he never explains what she knew. Every time you ask, his words spiral back into paranoia, into things he won't say directly. And yet, late that night, when you go home and sit in the dark, you realize his version of events doesn't align with your own memories. You remember Caroline sitting alone at lunch? Yes! You remember the hushed tone when managers spoke her name. But you don't remember her ever smiling at you the way Michael described, or ever writing in margins, or ever standing during meetings. In your head, she is only stillness, only silence. And that terrifies you, because if your memories don't match his, then whose are wrong? It gets worse when the audio glitches start again. You play back your own voicemails, the ordinary ones from your sister or from a doctor's office. But in between the pauses, there's an extra sound. A breath. A syllable. Sometimes you think it's your own voice layered faintly beneath, saying words you don't remember saying. Once, you hear yourself clearly mutter Caroline's name, though you have no recollection of recording it. You delete the voicemail, but it doesn't matter. The damage is done. Michael calls again days later, his voice frayed. He says he found something, a copy of a board transcript that was never filed in court. He insists it proves Carolyn was more than what they claimed. But when you meet him, he looks hollowed out, shaking, his fingers black with ink, as if he's been trying to write something he can't quite finish. He hands you the transcript, pages torn, stained, words bleeding into one another. You scan the sentences, but they don't hold. The words rearrange each time you blink, shifting order, changing meaning. By the third read-through, you can't tell if Caroline was speaking at all, or if the others were only imagining her voice. That's the turn that breaks you. Not the whispers, not the vanishing executive, not the phones lighting up with ghost texts. It's this realization. That memory is a cage, and someone is reaching inside to bend the bars. You can't even trust yourself anymore. You find yourself asking questions out loud in the middle of the night, not to anyone you can see, but to the silence itself. Did Carolyn pray for protection, or did she pray for power? Was her firing a punishment or a containment? Did the company rise because of her faith or because they stole it from her? And still, every answer feels like a trap. Michael warns you not to tell anyone else, that they don't want you to remember. But when you wake one morning, your phone blaring a voice memo you didn't record. It isn't Caroline's voice that plays, it's Michael's, panicked, whispering a different version of the same sentence you thought you saw that night. Except now, it isn't the same at all. The syntax has shifted, the subject changed. The words don't even mean what you thought they meant. You slam the phone down, pulse racing, because the truth hits you harder than any whisper in the dark. Maybe Caroline never spoke at all. Maybe you did. Maybe all of this, the prayers, the disappearances, the tapes are nothing more than echoes of something fractured in your own head. Or maybe that's exactly what they want you to believe, because the moment you doubt your own memory, the story can be buried again. And just as that thought anchors itself, the phone buzzes once more. Another message. No number. No time. Just a single line. Asterisk, stop trying to remember. It's not yours to carry. Asterisk. But this time, it isn't Caroline's voice you hear when you read it. It's your own. Do you want me to continue unraveling this until the climax, where the sentence is finally revealed? Or should I keep delaying its full meaning to keep the paranoia alive for the audience until the very end? It begins with the illusion of closure, the kind that makes your chest unclench for the first time in weeks. You wake up one morning and the weight feels lighter, as if the long nights of whispers and static have finally burned themselves out. Michael calls you calmer now, steadier, claiming he's pieced it together. He says he's found the reason Carolyn was fired, the hidden truth behind the company's rise. His voice no longer trembles. Instead, it carries a certainty that lures you in, because certainty is what you've been starving for. He insists on meeting in person, no more half-recorded tapes or ink-stained transcripts. When you see him, he looks almost normal again, almost human, as if the paranoia has left him. He hands you a folder of official documents, scanned emails, minutes from meetings. And for the first time, you feel like you're holding something solid, something you can point to, something that proves you're not crazy. The story he lays out is neat, too neat. Carolyn was targeted for being too vocal about irregularities in the company's financials. She was never supposed to be in the boardroom, never supposed to hear what she heard that day. The sentence, he says, was nothing supernatural. It was a simple accusation she dared to whisper, one the executives buried under layers of redacted files and sealed settlements. You flip through the folder, and every piece of paper seems to confirm it. Names, dates, emails with subject lines that align with your memory glitches. It all fits, and for a brief, dangerous moment, you feel the relief of a puzzle clicking into place. You tell yourself, that's all it was. Not spirits, not messages, through dead phones, not the impossible. Just corruption and cruelty, the ordinary evil that explains too much of the world. You lean into that resolution because it feels safer, easier, cleaner. Michael even laughs a little, as if he's shed the weight. He says, you can walk away now. Close the file. Move on. For the first time since this began, you almost believe him. But then comes the detail. Small, fragile, sharp enough to slice the illusion in half. On the last page of the folder, at the bottom of a scanned memo, you see a signature. Not Caroline's. Not any of the executives. It's yours. Your name, written in the curling ink of a pen you've never owned, dated 3 years before you ever stepped foot inside the company building. At first, you laugh it off. Tell Michael it must be a typo, a forgery, a digital error. But he doesn't laugh. His smile drains as he leans over your shoulder, eyes widening, whispering, I didn't show you that page. And the certainty he carried, the stability you clung to, collapses in an instant. Because if your name has been here all along, then your memory isn't just faulty, it's been The past slams into you with the force of a recovered memory. You remember another room, another job, years ago, when you were barely out of college. A different office, a different company, a different group of managers leaning in close while you sat at a desk with shaking hands. You had been asked to sign something you didn't understand, something they told you was routine. You remember the panic in your chest, the way your vision blurred, the way one of them said, it's just a formality. Don't think too hard about it. And then, nothing, the memory cuts out, replaced by a blankness you've never questioned until now. But in the hollow space of remembering, You feel the same dread, the same unspoken threat that has followed you here. Michael stares at you like he's afraid. He asks, if you're sure you never worked for this company before, if you're sure your first day was really your first day. His voice shakes again, the paranoia creeping back, but this time it's mirrored in you. Because the more you dig into the papers, the more you see traces of yourself. Notes and margins that match your handwriting initials beside decisions you don't recall, making fragments of your own voice, faintly transcribed in recordings you never gave. The false resolution unravels thread by thread until you can no longer tell if Carolyn was ever the center of this mystery at all or if she was only the mask. And that's when the real weight settles in. Not the company, not the executives, not Caroline. Something deeper. Something that has been here from the beginning, watching, shaping, bending your memories like clay. You Dante name it Chugantiba. You feel it pressing against the back of your skull. Guarding the glitch in your voicemail, the misplaced text, the reordering of transcripts. It isn't trying to hide anymore. It's letting you glimpse just enough to know it has always been there, always rewriting, always leaving just enough of the mystery uncovered to make you question, but never enough to let you escape. Michael senses it too. His eyes dart two corners, two shadows, two spaces in the room that seem empty but pulsed with presence. He mutters that maybe Caroline was never fired, maybe she was absorbed, rewritten. Just like you're being rewritten now. He reaches for your arm, and his grip is ice. He whispers, "You're not crazy! They lied to you! They always lied! But the lie is thicker than words. Because when you flip back to the first page of the folder, the documents have changed. The dates are different. The subject lines shift. And the signature at the bottom isn't yours anymore. It's scrawled in the same ink, the same date, as if she signed it while looking straight through time. You blink, shake your head, flip the page again. It changes back. Yours, hers, yours, hers. Each time you look, a different truth. And then the deeper memory, the one you never wanted, bleeds through. Sitting in church as a child, watching your mother bow her head in prayer, the way she whispered words too soft for you to hear, the way her lips moved differently than the prayers everyone else spoke. You remember being told not to pray like that it wasn't allowed, that it wasn't safe? And you remember her silence afterward, how she never explained, how she only smiled sadly when you asked. That memory, too, feels wrong now. Because in the silence of your room, you hear her voice again. Not in prayer, but repeating the very sentence you thought belonged to Caroline. The force has been here longer than Caroline, longer than the company, longer than you. It is threaded into your own blood, written into signatures you don't remember signing, layered into recordings of your own voice, saying words you never meant. It is memory itself, bent into something that doesn't belong to you. Michael stands to leave, muttering that he's gone too far, that they'll notice soon. But when he reaches the door, he freezes. Not like he's afraid, not like he's thinking, but like he's forgotten what comes next. Like someone has ripped the last line of his script away. He turns slowly, eyes blank, and whispers the sentence again. The sentence that has followed you from the boardroom to your phone to your own childhood. And in that instant, the false resolution collapses completely. Because you realize the story was never about Caroline's faith or the company's corruption. It was always about your memory, your past, your silence. You close the folder, your hands shaken. Because the truth that rattles in your chest is unbearable. Every time you've listened to this story, every time you've thought you were uncovering a mystery, you were only replaying the same script, the same manipulation, the same lie. And if you go back and watch again, you notice the detail you missed from the very beginning. The detail that proves you were never the witness. You were always the subject. Would you like me to write the final chapter as a collapse into full paranoia and revelation where the story? No. Longer tries to separate reality from memory, and the audience is forced to decide whether Caroline ever existed at all. You don't realize you're being watched until it's too late. Not by cameras or microphones. Not in the obvious ways you've been taught to fear, but by something quieter, heavier, a presence that feels as if it has been leaning over your shoulder since the first word was spoken. You thought the messages, the memory glitches, the whispering static were aimed at you alone. That you were the unlucky one who stumbled into a forbidden archive of faith and silence. But then the proof starts dripping in. An envelope slides under your door one morning, thick with folded pages. No return address. No postmark. Inside, You find transcripts, not of meetings or company records, but of your own words, your private thoughts, the exact things you said aloud in your apartment when no one was near. At the bottom of the last page is a sentence you don't remember speaking. You were right all along. The handwriting doesn't match. Michael's doesn't match yours. Doesn't match anyone you know. You burn the envelope in the sink, watch the ashes smear and vanish. But it doesn't matter. The next day, a stranger on the subway brushes past you and whispers the same phrase before stepping off at the next stop, leaving you trembling. It isn't paranoia anymore. There are others. They know. They've been following this story as closely as you, maybe closer, maybe since before it even began. It's in your dreams that they reveal themselves most clearly. Not faces. Never faces. Only shadows of people gathered in circles, all bowing their heads the way Carolyn once did. You wake up with impressions of symbols etched in your mind spirals, broken clocks, doors with no handles. You start noticing those same shapes in the real world. Scratched into bathroom stalls, drawn in condensation on subway windows, carved faintly into the wooden pew of the church you grew up in. These aren't coincidences. They're communications, markers for those who have lived through the same distortions, the same ruptures in memory. They are saying, you are not alone. But being seen doesn't comfort you, it makes the dread heavier. Because if others have been silently watching, then how deep does this run? How many lives have been twisted by these missing pieces, these memory glitches, these hidden truths, locked away under signatures that never belonged to them? You start reading online forums, looking for patterns, and you find fragments. People describing found footage from 20 years ago that plays differently each time. People recalling childhood moments that never lined up with their siblings' memories. People insisting they woke one morning with a scar they never had before. Their words are desperate, half-coherent, but you recognize the cadence. The same cadence as Caroline's voice. Michael refuses to read them. He says they're plants, distractions, another layer of the lie. But you can't look away, because in those threads are sentences that echo your own thoughts, posted by people in states you've never been to, in years before you ever spoke aloud what you've only recently come to know. How could they have written your words before you did? Unless this isn't about time in the way you've been taught, unless you've been repeating a script that was always there, waiting to be remembered. And then comes the third perspective, the one that fractures everything. You receive a VHS tape in the mail, cracked and yellowed, marked with nothing but the date. August 1999. You don't own a player, but when you track one down and watch, your stomach knots. The footage is grainy, static bleeding across the frame, but the camera is fixed on a conference table almost identical to the one in the company boardroom. Around it sit a handful of men and women in outdated suits, their faces obscured by shadow. The sound is faint, warped, but beneath the hiss you hear a voice. It isn't Caroline's, it isn't Michael's, it isn't yours. It belongs to someone you've never met. It feels familiar in the marrow of your bones. The voice says, clear as if whispered in your ear, what the government never released is the part they buried inside you. You rewind, play it again, but the voice changes each time. Sometimes it says your name, sometimes your mother's, sometimes no name at all. And the last time you play it, the voice stops mid-sentence and the camera tilts. For a split second, the lens turns to the corner of the room and you see someone standing there, watching, not seated, not participating, only observing, silent and still. And in that flicker of a moment, you know what you're looking at? The third perspective, the observer, the one who has been here since before Caroline, before the company, the only one who might be telling the truth or none of it. After that, the symbols multiply. Chalk marks appear on the sidewalk outside your building, spirals and half-formed words that vanish by morning. Emails arrive in your inbox with no sender, subject lines cut off mid-sentence, attachments that won't open. Sometimes they say nothing but repeat the same phrase over and over. you were right all along. Other times they show screenshots of things you've never seen security footage from inside. Your old church, your own apartment window filmed from across the street, blurry stills of your childhood. Home taken long after your family moved away. Someone has been collecting your life like evidence. Someone has been building this case around you while you thought you were the one uncovering the mystery. And through it all, Michael grows more erratic. He insists the others aren't allies, that they aren't here to help you, that they're only mirroring back what you already suspect. He says the observer on the tape isn't a person at all, but the force itself wearing the shape of one. But then you catch him writing the same symbols in the margins of his notebooks, the same spirals, and broken clocks, as if he's channeling the very thing he fears. When you confront him, he swears he doesn't remember doing it, his eyes glassy, his hand trembling. You don't know whether to believe him. The deeper you go, the more identity itself unravels. Memories no longer feel personal, they feel assigned, distributed like files. You start to wonder if Caroline was ever a woman at all, or if she was only a container, a story constructed to anchor something larger. You wonder if your name belongs to you, or if it was chosen to fit a signature written decades before you were born. You wonder how many of the Watchers are living real lives, and how many are only echoes, placed there to confirm what you've been led to believe. And still, the dream circles return. More faces now, clearer, though not faces you can identify. They look at you as if waiting, as if you're supposed to speak the sentence you've been carrying. You wake each time with the same sensation not that you've dreamed, but that you've remembered. That the line between waking and sleeping has been dissolved. And when you open your eyes, you see it written faintly on your own wall in the glow of streetlight. Asterisk. Stop trying to remember it as. Not yours to carry. You don't erase it. You don't even move. You lie awake, staring, waiting for the next proof, the next glitch, the next message that proves you're not losing your mind. Because the truth is heavier than doubt. You were never just an observer. You were never just the subject. You were part of the circle all along! And somewhere, right now, someone else is watching this same story, reading these same words, feeling the same static ripple under their skin. They're wondering if they're alone, if they're crazy, if they're next. But you know better! The Watchers have always been here. The symbols were always for them. And the most unbearable part is this. When you go back and watch from the beginning, frame by frame, you'll see it. The observer was always in the corner, in every room, every memory, every glitch. You just didn't recognize them because they were standing in the same place every time. Behind you. Do you want the final descent next chapter where identity collapses completely and the audience is forced to confront whether they are themselves part of the Watchers? It begins quietly, not with a revelation shouted into the room, not with a final message carved into your phone screen, but with the heavy silence that comes when you realize there is no going back. You've traced every thread, followed every glitch, listened to every whisper that slipped through walls and wires. And for all of it, you thought you were searching for what happened? To Caroline. To Michael. To the company. To yourself. But somewhere along the way, the shape of the question changed. And now you understand with a sinking dread that it was never about what. It was always about why. Why you? Why the memories? Why the silence has always felt thicker than air? Why you've carried a weight you couldn't name? The others knew it. The Watchers, who left you symbols in the condensation, the shadows gathered in your dreams, the strangers who brushed your shoulder and whispered that you were right all along. They were indeed guiding you toward an answer. They were waiting to see if you'd ask the right question, the one that tears the skin off the ordinary world. What does it mean if the License separated from you, but Asterix is you? Michael's voice is the first to break through that silence. He sits across from you, his face hollowed, his hands restless, and confesses what you always suspected. He says he was never just a co-worker. He says he's been inside this story longer than he can remember, planted close enough to keep you on track, but never far enough to tell you the truth. He admits he doesn't even know if his memories belong to him anymore, that sometimes when he looks in the mirror, he doesn't recognize his own face. His voice cracks as he says he's tired, that he doesn't want to carry it anymore. For one aching moment, he looks more human than he ever has. And then he tells you the part that slices you open. Caroline never existed the way you thought. She was an outline, a vessel, a mirror for the silence inside you. Her prayers weren't words spoken in faith, they were the shape of your own forgotten voice. The one you buried years ago when you chose silence over truth. You want to deny him. You want to scream that you saw her? That you knew her? That you remember? The way she bowed her head at her desk? But even as the protests form, they splinter in your chest. Because the memory doesn't hold. Each time you replay it, she shifts sometimes. She's sitting closer to you than she should be. Sometimes her hair is darker. Sometimes her face is blurred entirely. She is there and not there. Real and not real. A ghost built from something inside you. And that's when the deeper confession riz not from Michael, not from Caroline, but from yourself. It comes unbidden. A wound tearing itself open. You whisper that you remember. You remember the day your mother stopped praying? You remember the night you signed something you didn't understand? You remember how you buried the questions because asking them meant losing everything. You remember being told not to look too closely, not to dig too deep, because truth was dangerous. Truth was costly. Truth was what they would punish you for. And so you chose silence. You chose the safety of forgetting. And in that forgetting, you created her. Caroline wasn't fired. Caroline was a part of you! You saw the part that believed, the part that prayed, the part that kept speaking when you went quiet. You tried to cut her out, but the world doesn't let you bury faith, or grief, or memory. It only lets you split it off, give it another name, and pretend you never knew it. She became the ghost in the boardroom, the whisper on your phone, the sentence in the shadows. She was a piece of you demanding to be remembered, no matter the cost. And now, sitting here, trembling with Michael's eyes, locked on yours, you understand the choice? If you believe the lie, if you cling to the false resolution, you can walk away. You can burn the transcripts, ignore the watchers, and pretend Caroline was only a woman you once worked beside. You can live in silence again! What if you accept the other truth that she was you? That the company thrived because it stole not her faith, but yours then. You will never be safe again. Because the moment you remember, the moment you speak, the moment you reclaim the voice you buried, you become visible to them. To the force that has always been watching, always writing, always guiding you to this exact moment. The air thickens as you wait. And maybe this is what being human has always meant. Not solving mysteries, not uncovering hidden truths, but choosing what version of reality you can bear to live with. Do you stay asleep inside the dream? Or do you wake up and risk never finding rest again? Your chest aches as you realize you've already chosen. Because, in speaking the confession, in naming the silence, in admitting Caroline was the part of you that never stopped believing of torn open the veil, you've let the watchers see you fully. And as Michael lowers his head, as if in prayer, you feel it, the presence filling the room, the observer stepping closer. The weight is something that has been here since the beginning. Not cruel, not kind, only endless, and in its gaze, you feel both destroyed and made whole. The last thing you remember before the light shifts is the sentence, not whispered now, but spoken in your own voice. Steady, unbroken. Some truths don't want to be found. And then, silence. A silence so complete it feels like the end of the world or the beginning of it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.